What is the biz, everybody? And welcome you to another episode of the King's Corner of Piranha StreamCast here on YouTube and Facebook. I am your host of the day, KingFishMack, here to give you my point of view on what's going on in the news today. Just my point of view. I guess unless you've been living under a rock for the last couple of weeks, you guys are all aware of the drama that's been going on with our boy Kanye West, the Jewish community, black media, and the whole cancellation of him. Seems like every day we have something that's in the news, some new twist or turn. And I just thought I'd take a minute to kind of break down some of the lesser known ins and outs of this Kanye saga and how I think personally that this is an economic lynching of the richest black person in the history of America, and that we collectively as a black community have participated, not just participated in our silence, but some of our more prevalent black voices have come out and taken some of the most aggressive stance against our boy Kanye, siding with mainstream media and mainstream thought over whatever this dude is trying to express. So let me give you a little background. This all kind of came to pass. Well, first of all, we'll start with the idea that we have all kind of grown to assume or to utilize, and that is this title of being a genius and visionary and that type of thing. I think that oftentimes when we're trying to give Kanye props, we use that genius, visionary kind of title. When we're trying to excuse him from certain types of behavior, we'll say the same thing, that most geniuses, they don't perform very well in social settings. Or we use it as a very pejorative, kind of demeaning characterization, like genius, yeah, right, genius where type of shit. But the fact of the matter is, we cannot argue with, the idea that this dude came from the nothingness of hip hop, ground floor, from the dirt, and he grew to heights and a stature that most of us can only imagine in conversation. You know what I'm saying? And generally, we imagine that shit wrong. We don't know the ins and outs of being a multi-billionaire. What we do know is that he achieved that status. We do know also that Forbes, for the last 4, 5, 8 years, has argued with giving him that status, billionaire status. This kind of was only reserved for, Oprah, Bob Johnson, Jay-Z, Rihanna, and Beyonce. Other than that, you don't want to have, nobody that was, kind of out there saying, look, man, I did some shit that y'all didn't give me credit for being able to do, and standing on that. Not only that, the thing that separates Kanye from these other billionaires, in my opinion, is that Kanye's program and his mantra has always kind of been, you niggas don't believe in me, but let me show you. And if I could show you, and I'm just Kanye, imagine what the rest of my people could show you if they put, the same type of work effort or the work ethic into whatever it is that we're trying to do as a collective. So, mainstream media and the people who we kind of look to determine the worth and the value of not just our people, but all people, have kind of been shitting on Kanye for the last 4 or 5 years, saying that he wasn't a billionaire. Then just recently, I think it was probably like January or March or something, Forbes came out and admitted that he was a billionaire. First it said 2 billion, then they said 7, and Kanye said 11. In any event, the 1 is all we need for purposes of this argument, right? You got a dude from hip hop, very humble beginnings, kind of defied all the odds and all the various different genres of entertainment, fashion, and fucking corporate maneuvering. And he did what he said he was going to do. Now, the biggest valuation in his portfolio was the Adidas deal. And it's funny how as soon as Adidas terminated the agreement, all of the vlogs, black vlogs in general, started coming with the I told you so's and assuming that, Kanye West woke up in the morning and was just broke, went from 11 billion to 0. And that he was basically just kicked out of, his own shit. We dropped you. But what you have to understand is that the deal with Adidas was not quite what you think. It wasn't a shoe deal like a Jordan deal or fucking LeBron deal or some shit like that. It's a joint venture. And even to say a joint venture is kind of loose, but for purposes of this conversation, we'll say it's a joint venture where Kanye owns the trademark to Yeezy and a whole bunch of other names, brands, images, that type of shit. In partnership with Adidas, they decided to come up with what is basically a joint product, which is the Yeezy by Adidas, right? In the various different styles and colorways. The ownership, and you kind of got to look at it almost like the music business. So it's a licensing split deal, 50-50 or whatever the numbers is, right? On all the proceeds that are generated from the sales. However, the design team comes from Adidas, right? The innovation team comes from Yeezy, right? So it's Adidas's product, right? But it's Yeezy's name. So say if they dissolve the partnership, which they actually did, what actually happens is there is no more licensing deal for Adidas to produce the shoes or new shoes under the Yeezy brand. And there is no more deal with Yeezy, the Yeezy as the company, for Adidas to design and produce his particular product, whatever that is, shoes, clothes, whatever, right? However, in legal standings, right, you have what's called survivor's clauses in contractual law. And what a survivor's clause basically says, it's not like, your kid gets the shit after you die. What a survivor's clause is it basically says that any rights that were established during the contract exceeds the life of the contract, right? So, and this is very interesting because what it actually does is it stops, well, it doesn't stop. It allows Adidas to continue to sell the shoes that they have already designed and own, right? But you still got to pay Kanye the 50% gap on the profit from it, right? Because the rights extend further than the life of the contract. You found a way to find him in violation of the contract, and so you dissolve the contract, right? But you still selling the shoes, and there's still monies owed to Kanye from sales to date of the shoes or whatever other products, right? It's very interesting that in Adidas' statement, what they said was because of blah, 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 they were ending the partnership with Yeezy, that they would end production of any further line, which of course you can't do anyway if the contract is no longer valid. However, we will not be making any payments to Kanye or Yeezy as a company, any further payments. So that means whatever money that you already owe to him, you saying, fuck you, I'm just going to keep your fucking dough. Plus, the statement that you are the sole owner of all of the designs up to date indicates that you have an intention to continue with the line, just in various different colorways, right? Just reissue the 305s or whatever the fuck the name of the shoes is in a different colorway, still under the Yeezy Adidas brand. And then you're saying that you don't want to pay the boy his money. To me, it just all kind of comes back to, you know, the original beef. The original beef, if you remember, if you guys remember, if you were keeping up, Yeezy was putting Adidas on blast for creating new colorways and reissuing shoes outside of the current lines, reissuing old lines in new colorways that he did not approve. Got to remember, Yeezy is an artist, right? So sensitive about his shit. So if he issued a limited amount of these particular styles in this particular colorway, then that's all he wanted to do. He didn't want it to be in orange and black or whatever the fuck y'all coming up with, right? So this began his public rants about Adidas. Same type of thing with the Gap. Gap, he's got to deal with him and Balenciaga have a partnership, and that partnership has a venture with Gap, right? To place Balenciaga engineered Yeezy or engineered Gap shit by Yeezy, right? So all of it would have Gap logos or whatever, right? But you would know that this is Gap by Yeezy, and it's all the designs and everything is coming from Balenciaga. What Gap started doing is taking the same designs and just issuing them as Gap t-shirts, Gap hoodies. You know what I'm saying? It looks exactly like the Gap Yeezy shit, but much lower price. So you copying this shit while you're in business with him. He's not getting no fucking Gap off of the shit that you selling that is just Gap products. And you watering down the market for his original shit that might cost a little bit more. But what's more important is, you know, he gets a percentage of the profits. So what it seemed to me at the time was that Kanye was in business with people who were trying to treat him like just a street nigga who happened to luck up on some money and was able to forge forth in the fashion field, right? we all know Kanye is not quite that person, right? Kanye is not only this visionary, quote unquote, but he's also very, very self-absorbed, right? Like he is the walking dictionary version of megalomaniacal, right? This dude believes that he is the sun and all the rest of us are planets that revolves around him. I say that not as a criticism, simply as an observation, right? Because again, with great genius comes a whole bunch of social fuck shit. So Kanye begins his tirade against Adidas and Gap. What he does, and this is where I believe that he made his critical error. What he did is he recognized that the companies that were trying to take advantage of him were manned or headed by people who resembled the same companies that had been taking advantage of him in the music business, publishing, taking advantage of his image and his relationships in terms of tabloid media. All of these people had similarities in common. And what Kanye did was made the mistake of saying that out loud. Because the minute that you start to identify a particular subgenre of people, right? And you attribute negative activities to that subgenre of people. One of the very first or most effective defense strategies is to rely upon the outrage of the people who are similar to you, but who don't do the shit that you do. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm a very big proponent of the idea that street dudes really don't have a voice in economics, politics, social shit, just the general conversation amongst Black people. We generally are talked about, very pejoratively, like, Pookies and Ray Rays, or when we are talked about in terms of having some value, it is statistically in terms of, being able to vote or having some type of statistical effect that someone else is trying to argue. Like this, we've all heard 40% of all adult Black males in the United States have been or are under the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice in some form or fashion. Either been arrested, on probation, in the penitentiary, in custody, in the county jails, or you currently or have been on parole. They're saying 40% of Black males, right? So when you argue that point, or when you hear that point argued, is generally, 40% of Black men, are criminals, right? And you make that argument as though it is representative of the whole, right? Like you never talk about the 60% of Black men that aren't under, haven't had any kind of criminal contact with the Department of Justice. You don't even talk about them. You simply argue the statistics, right, to generalize a particular point about Black men as a whole, right? And the funny thing about it is that 60%, they never can come to the defense of the 40% who's out here doing fuck shit or, being involved in criminality, right? You never hear the hardworking Black man coming on a podcast defending the honor or the fucking rights or the fucking origin of, Niggas that's knocking people over the head or, committing crimes in the neighborhood or nothing like that, right? What you hear is that 60%, when they do speak up, is they make a very distinct separation between them and that 40% that's on the fuck shit, right? With the Jewish community, which is who Kanye offended, you can't do that, right? That is not a possibility, right? So let's say we have 100 record company executives, media executives, and fashion executives, right? Corporate motherfuckers, right? And all of these people exhibit the same type of behavior, right? Fucking avarice, fucking greed, take advantage of people that are in lesser positions. There's no equanimity in terms of profit sharing. Like, this is just what it has been, right? And we argue these points. Like, you always have somebody picketing, somebody doing some kind of fucking boycott against some business, some big company or another, right? But it's just the company. You never identify the actual people that make the company work. But if you do identify the people that make the company work and that company is on some fuck shit, if those people happen to be Jewish, then what they'll say is, you cannot indict all the Jewish people. It is a racist trope to say that Jewish people have control of this, that, and the third. Banking, media, fashion, corporate shit, whatever the fuck, right? It is anti-Semitic to make that assumption, even though you may be speaking about particular Jewish people who, if any of this shit is correct, they're not operating within the proper tenets of the Jewish faith. I mean, like, you being cutthroat and some more shit, right? Taking advantage of people. Those are not very admirable fucking traits in terms of trying to get to heaven, as far as I'm concerned. But what's more important is most Jewish people aren't executives of shit. They're just like me, regular people, right? They're just like all the rest of us black people who don't get offended when you talk about the black people who are doing fuck shit, right? And when you add in the personal experience, right, that Kanye at the time is experiencing this particular feeling with his business partners who happen to share quite a few common traits. The one that we're going to highlight, or the one that is highlighted the most, is that they're of the Jewish faith, right, or Jewish lineage. Then what happens is we stop even looking at the shit that he's talking about, and we only start thinking about the way that his words are received by the people who he is accusing of fucking him over. So it's really kind of crazy to me, right? Like, for an audience, us as an audience, we would be watching this movie unfold. We've always known Kanye as being the good guy. Yeah, he says some fucked up shit. But how many of you guys haven't? How many of you guys, when trying to express yourself or trying to express a particular point of view or whatever, you've said some shit that everybody else has been like, whoa, nigga, what the fuck? Like, we literally have words in our culture, right, that signifies when somebody says something that's like, nigga, that's some suspect, like pause, no homo, shit like that, right? Like, this shit is in our vernacular, right? It's in our vernacular because it's very, very prevalent in our speech patterns that we get very emotional and we say what the fuck is on our mind without trying to stop and censor ourselves for someone else's sensitivities. Feel what I'm saying? Later on in the game, Kanye said that he wasn't trying to offend Jewish people. He is jealous of Jewish people. and their ability to come together and unify and stand for particular tenets, particular standards of treatment, how they will not be treated, what you cannot say to or about them. Like, I understand that. I'm equally as jealous as a Black man. I am equally as jealous of the Jewish community and their ability to stand in unity and demand particular treatment as I am with the gay, lesbian, trans community. Same thing. As I am with the Asian community to a lesser extent. Same thing. As I am with the Hispanic community to a lesser extent. Same thing, right? All of these different groups have shown in the past that they're able to not only come together and unify, but to also mobilize over a common goal. Black folks haven't seemed to have been able to do that since 1972, in my humble opinion, right? In every aspect of cultural argument, it seems as though we are more judgmental about our own people, more critical of our own people than we are of the people who literally hurt us, hurt our cause. Which kind of brings me to the way that Black media has responded to the Kanye scenario. So, admittedly, things that Kanye said about Jewish people are unacceptable in our culture. We're just going to roll with that. We're not going to argue the what ifs, wherefores, and whys. We're just going to say that Jewish people have been self-determinate in saying what it is that you're not going to say about them. That is the standard that has been set. And if you have a problem with that, then your ass will be canceled, period. That's just what it is. So to know that ahead of time and to still jump out that window, then you have to say that, okay, nigga, you gonna get what you got coming. Like, if you are in a position to where the people that you are offending are able to make determinative moves in order to affect your bottom line, then you have to accept that along with, all other accountability for the shit that you choose to say. And I think that Kanye actually did that. I think that he was aware that coming out and being so aggressively critical of the people who he had problems with, right, his business partners, and putting it in a way that offended, that historically an entire community of people, even though you're talking about the crooks in that community of people, right? Not the whole community. Whole community is mostly good people. But you got some crooks in the community, just like you got crooks in every community, right? And I think that what Kanye expected was that those people would not be, they would be forced to stop doing business with him, right? To which he was always trying to do. This is what he was saying from the beginning. He said it's going to cost Adidas billions to keep me. It's going to cost them billions to get rid of me. No matter what, you got to write the fucking check. Then he said, I could be anti-Semitic. I could say anti-Semitic shit and Adidas still can't drop me. So what he was doing is he was pushing Adidas to make a move. Because again, what you have to understand is that while we're concentrating on dollars generated or dollars expected from future sales of products that are already on the market, what we're not thinking about is next season, right? Remember, Kanye is a fashionista. Kanye realizes that everything comes in season. So yeah, I created these foam posits and I created these 305s and the whatever in these last 3 years. But 2023 comes around, I'm not fucking with that shit. No way. That's why we have limited editions of the shit, right? That's why we have limited colorways, right? Because at some point those have to become classics. They have to become rare. And we move on to what's happening next season. New designs, some new funky ass shit that everybody's gonna jump on. And the thing about it is, Yeezy is saying I could do that with anybody. I'm the visionary. My team is the visionaries here. We're coming up with the ideas. You guys are simply executing the ideas with the mathematics and the technological shit, right? It also distributed the product. Once the product is done, once the product comes to market, right? We let you put your name on it, like you came up with this shit. So I can go do this shit with Skechers. I can go back to Nike. I can go to New Balance and blow their shit up. This is how Kanye is thinking, because Kanye is thinking it's the Kanye design that changes the shape of the company that he partners with, not the other way around. And I think that where we fail as a community of people, and we're trying to criticize Kanye, is that we have a tendency to think of it from the other way around. We are so used to getting a check, right, signed by somebody else on the fucking bottom right-hand corner, that we don't realize that it's better to be the one writing the check and signing it on the bottom right-hand corner, right? We can't even conceptualize that, right? So where Kanye is saying, I don't give a damn about, I don't care so much about the state of this business right here. We'll let the lawyers work that out. I want to move on. I'm in deals that don't allow me to move on. They keep me in the same position that I'm not feeling. And so I'm going to do what's necessary to get the fuck up out of these positions so that I can move on to my next shit, my next big shit. Remember, the nigga ain't missed yet, right? Everything he said he was going to do, he did. We dotted him every time. So the thing about it is, he, like he says, goes DEFCON 3. He pushes the button, the nuclear button on his Jewish partners. If I go in on you on, being fucking Jewish bandits, right, then your people will make you drop me. What Kanye wasn't expecting was his people siding with his opponents on whatever fucking level. Now, Charlemagne the God, who I'm growing a heavier and heavier disdain for as the time goes by, seems to be the loudest person. Hey, Mama Nell. That's right. He's still there. He's still able to function. So Charlemagne the God has been the biggest person with the biggest bullhorn in black media to be on the cancel Kanye movement, right? Might as well be setting up petitions. Charlemagne the God has, first of all, Charlemagne says that Kanye should be canceled because he has too big a voice to be spewing anti-Semitic and white supremacist rhetoric. Kanye West, according to Charlemagne the God, is a bigot, a Nazi, and worse than the KKK. This is what Charlemagne said about Kanye West. Now, mind you, Charlemagne and Kanye, they've been beefing for quite a few years. Kanye Kanye is very sensitive, so anytime that he feels a kinship with Charlemagne, thinks they on some cool shit, and Charlemagne says something critical about him in the media, Kanye takes that shit very, very personal. He goes on Twitter rant, this, that, and the third. Again, let me be clear. I'm not throwing Kanye any bail about the rants that he goes on and whether or not that shit is crazy, reasonable, or anything like that, right? That's right, Ma. I think that when he goes on these rants, he's just talking about some hurt or another that somebody who he thought wouldn't hurt him has perpetrated against him. And it comes out all over the place. He rants, it's kind of scattered. But if you listen to him, you generally can understand what the fuck he's trying to say to you and the point that he's trying to make about a particular person, right? It was that way with Kim. It was that way with Kris Kardashian or Kris Jenner. It was that way when he went through the whole shit with Ray J. Not when Ray J gave him the computer, but when he was on that shit about I'm not standing for nobody talking about how they had sex with my wife and all that bullshit. Like out the blue, Ray J hit him with I hit it first. All these different episodes come from what we understand to be someone who is emotionally maybe not as stable as everyone else, and who feels as though there's absolutely nothing wrong with being expressive as opposed to holding all that stress in and fucking developing an ulcer or some bullshit. On top of that, we have to acknowledge his bipolar disorder and however that might affect things, right? But what kills me about Charlemagne's position is that Charlemagne, number one, is supposed to be so big on mental health, right? And Charlemagne gives no bail for the bipolar portion of this argument at all. As a matter of fact, on one of his podcasts, he actually poo-pooed that idea away. One of his co-hosts actually said something about him being bipolar and maybe off his meds. And he was like, yeah, I don't care nothing about him being bipolar. Whoop, he's racist. He's a Nazi. Blah, blah, blah. The thing that kills me is that Charlemagne's position is that Kanye is all of these things, and that because he's all of these things that Charlemagne disagrees with, and he has such a big voice that it is dangerous to allow him to express any of these ideas. So we have to cancel him. What I would say is that Charlemagne has as equal a big voice. You have 3 podcasts and the number 1 morning show in the world on terrestrial radio. You reach way more millions of people than Kanye does on his little rants. Matter of fact, more people know about the shit that Kanye says because you jump right on and repeat the shit that he says in order to criticize him and try to cancel him. So I would say that it is equally as reprehensible for a black man who comes from nothing, Charlemagne, Moncks Corner, South Carolina, up through the ranks of all the fuck shit that you did on radio. Come on, man. Like, you was really a character, man. You offended so many people. As a matter of fact, I just watched a DJ Vlad interview from about 9 years ago where Charlemagne the God was expressing the exact same sentiments that Kanye is being canceled for right now by Charlemagne the God. I bullshit you not. I'll leave a link in the description after I shoot this live. So I would say that you have the Breakfast Club, you have the Brilliant Idiots podcast, and you also have the Hell of a Week on Comedy Central that comes on every Friday night. And 2 Fridays in a row, you've been on your Kanye rants, right? So I would say that it is equally as reprehensible, if not more reprehensible, for a black man who comes from nothing and built himself up through a bunch of fuck shit to be trying to utilize as big a platform as you have to cancel another black man. Especially the only black man who has climbed the ranks of financial success to be able to box with the people who sign your checks, Charlemagne. I mean, like, let's make no mistake, Charlemagne, you are not no $11 billion guy, right? So to kind of put yourself in the same sphere to be able to basically spank somebody, right? Like, you out of your fucking pay grade, bro. Like, we don't hear you having these kind of conversations about Bezos or fucking what's the Tesla guy's name? Can't think of his name right now. Or any of these billionaires. You don't talk that way about Oprah. You don't talk about spanking Oprah, canceling Oprah because of, you know, some fuck shit that she says. Like, you realize that you got to fucking pay it up. Like, you pay homage to those people because you realize that they are so much out of your depth. Same thing with Jay-Z and Rihanna. Like, you idolize Jay-Z and Beyonce and Rihanna through extension, because she's a billionaire now too, to the extent that, you know, you say their last name is your last name, bruh. But Kanye don't get that same thing because you still think of Kanye as a peer. You think of him as a rapper. Think of him as a turbulent ass rapper, you know, who's spoiled enough to get a record deal for being a producer that probably shouldn't have got a record deal in the first place. But you got to understand, man, that this dude kind of exceeds all of that, right? Like, he really went to them levels that you criticized when he was saying he was going to do them. And so now it's almost like it's a specific type of hate that you have for the guy, that you are going to be the one. You're going to be the black man to take, you know, the richest black man down. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is that all about, bro? Like, why not just keep your fucking mouth shut? Like, let that shit play out between him and the Jewish community, right? Like, I'm not offended. Let me just say that, right? Like, all that shit y'all say, like, and then try to throw the shit that he said about George Floyd in as something that's supposed to make black people, you know, it's the dog whistle for black folks and shit, right? Oh, he said in such and such and fentanyl and George Floyd and whooping. What he said wasn't correct, but it wasn't that off either, right? It wasn't as though he just created some shit out of, you know, mid-air and roll with that shit, right? These are talking points that, you know, have been thrown around in our community, you know what I'm saying, depending upon what position you take, you know what I'm saying, because everybody doesn't, and this is not me, but Elon Musk, thanks, man. Everybody does not view George Floyd with the same reverence in the black community, right? Like, it's almost like the older you are, the more shit you've been through, the more you're able to see a lot of the shit that don't have no fucking bearing on whether or not George Floyd deserved to die, but are still character descriptions, character describers, or whatever that you want to call them, right? That, you know, somebody older is always going to take into consideration, right? So where you might be 19 years old right now, and you heard about what happened to George Floyd, and you don't know nothing else, it's just George Floyd, right? You might put him in the same category that I would put Emmett Till. But somebody who was alive in the days of Emmett Till, right? An older black man would be like, yeah, but you don't be whistling at no fucking white women, all that kind of shit, right? Things that have nothing to do with the outcome, but gives a person who lived in that era, a black man who lived in that era, a whole different understanding of what happened to Emmett Till. Same thing with me and George Floyd and cats that's older. The younger you get, the less that shit matters because you're more thinking about the principle of shit, which is the more important thing, make no doubt about it. So the fact that he would say something about George Floyd and fentanyl, right? That is an actual factual thing that had nothing, it wasn't as much as a contributor to his death as the statement itself makes. But what I would say is for a nigga to just be talking, you know what I'm saying, the 3-hour drink champs, you drinking, talking to your boys, basically, and you being filmed, like that's something that you'll throw in there. Oh man, shit, whooping. Shit ain't like it was supposed to be whooping. You know, it's always some kind of story, and you know, they're gonna paint the story like they want. Like, you know, my boy Floyd, man, they hit him with the fentanyl, right? Like, you know, how do whatever the fuck, right? You trying to make a point to Nori, you not trying to argue this point to the rest of fucking America, like you standing on this shit. And at the time that you made the statement, what you guys were talking about, or what Kanye was referencing, was the video, that the documentary that he had just seen a couple of nights before or whatever, Candace Owens' documentary on the Black Lives Matter organization, in which they examined that, right? They examined that allegation, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, right? So he was just repeating a talking point from a movie that he just saw. He wasn't trying to make no fucking point that, oh yeah, George Floyd wasn't killed by Derek Chauvin, that the knee on his back didn't do that. Whoop, and yeah, I'm standing with him, and the white boy needs to be let out of jail. It wasn't no shit like that. But what it was is you grab onto whatever you can to kind of get black folks involved in this outrage against Kanye West, because he's speaking so reckless against his Jewish competitors, or the people who he is in conflict with, who happen to be Jewish. All of them. So Charlemagne is the orator of that. He is the broker of that narrative, right? And I think that can't come from a particular positioning, because you have the same fucking positioning, right? You, like I said, he said on DJ Vlad 9 years ago, Vlad said something to him about the Jewish community, and he said, I don't even want to talk about that shit, man. I'm scared to talk about it. You got my heart beating fast. It's like, you can't say nothing about them. You know, they run everything. This is what Charlemagne said. They run everything. They run all the media, all the record companies. Whoop, nigga, you can't say shit. Your ass will be canceled. So I love my Jewish people, blah, 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 right? That's always the disclaimer. Oh yeah, I said the fucked up shit that I wasn't supposed to say, but make no mistake, I love my Jewish people. Well, that's what Kanye said too. Charlemagne won't give him no fucking breathing room, though, right? And I say Charlemagne won't give him no breathing room because somebody put a battery in Charlemagne's back not to, right? Same thing with Donda Academy. You know, this is his own shit. You guys decide that y'all gonna close the school down because of some shit that he said on social media. Like he ain't the fucking founder of the school. And then you actually said the shit in statements. Our unfortunate statements from our founder, blah, 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 will be closed. This nigga opened the school right back up. Like, y'all got me fucked up. But you have to admit that, or you have to acknowledge that, you know, they were probably looking at where were they getting a lot of their funding. You know what I'm saying? And we on some cancel Kanye as a culture shit, right? As a mainstream culture. And then as a black culture following the mainstream culture. Where the school is probably thinking, we need to get out of the way until this shit blows over. Let's close the school for a minute, week or two, separate, the business interests of the school from the personal interests of Kanye West and his particular business interests that don't have fuck to do with the school, and send out letters to the parents and our sponsors, contributors and shit that we don't stand with any anti-Semitic conversations or statements, blah, blah, blah. And then hope that shit just keeps on rolling. But that's his shit. That's his shit. Anyway, what it seems to me is that you had Kanye West, who has scratched and clawed his way to a position that we all in any kind of commerce as black men all dream of, being totally independent, right? Like independently successful, and then not having to rely upon the decision making of a boss, right, to be able to accomplish whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish in life and in commerce. He did that, right? And because of his brashness, because he achieved that particular status and then sat on that hill and said, y'all can't fuck with me. Like, what you gonna do? I got my own shit. Like, I'm up there with y'all. I'm having dinner with Elon. Fuck you talking about. You dudes that's talking shit to me are on salary for $14 million a year. I'm making $1.3 billion a year. You don't talk to me like that. I talk to you. And I think what happened is that commerce, for lack of a safer name, came together and said, we ain't gonna have no nigga getting at us like that. We not gonna have no black man setting the stage for future black men to come and operate outside of the system that we set up for they ass to achieve nominal success. Same shit they did with Dame Dash. Dame Dash preached ownership all the way back in the fucking 90s, man. That's all he talked about. Ownership, not having a boss, being in partnership with these fucking distributors and these companies and, all these big brands, but not letting them own a fucking thing. You don't own shit. Even if I have to sell you half of my company to get the operating capital to run the company, I want to set it up to where in 5 years I can buy that back from you and still have 100% ownership. And what they do, they still trying to cancel Dame. Dame's still independent, still doing his shit, still talking his shit. But most of the black people who are playing the game according to the system's rules, they shun him. They don't not like Dame. You know what I'm saying? Like, most motherfuckers say, I love Dame. I just can't fuck with him in his business. He's toxic. What that means is he's going to make the motherfucker that signs the check mad. Because Dame don't piss off fans. We love Dame's ass, right? Same thing with Kanye. I'm not mad at Kanye. I think that Kanye probably could have found better words to express himself and to work whatever angle he was trying to work than words that most of us can't stand with him on, though we all probably mostly silently, agree with the shit that he was saying, but not the way that he was saying it. Yeah, I don't think that the average fan really gives three shits about him offending some other billionaires, some other multi-hundred millionaires, and he's the billionaire. When we get down to the knowledge that all the time they was trying to fuck him over. They were still trying to treat the nigga like he had 100 million. All right, you guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments. You guys know what to do. Like, share video, subscribe, hit that red button. Y'all know what to do. Hit the red button. Hit the little bell so your notifications will be up. In the meantime, I've been KingFishMack. This is another edition of King's Corner. Piranha Pond here on YouTube and Facebook. Catch us on all our other shits. Peace!